Sami, that I was like listening to the Three People podcast you guys did with another host. But anyway, we're live. Hi, Jonathan and Sami. Welcome to Venture with Grace.
Great to be here, Grace. Thanks for having us.
For having us.
So I was like just telling Sami that I was like so impressed by like when you guys say like, you know, you close it. Oh, what is going on? Oh no, technical difficulties on a daily basis. Oh my God, you're back. Oh,
Yep.
I was gonna say I was just like so impressed that you guys closed a round within like a day or something. Like, when you guys like started raising funding. Maybe we could start with your background. So, Jonathan, you have worked at many like great companies, and your last job was like the global vice president of customer success and strategy at HubSpot. And I just went to the HubSpot conference the other day. It was like very cool. And like Sami, you work at like I guess like you hold very different roles. Like one the most recent is like you were a co-founder of a company, and then you have worked on like critical product at Google. Why don't we start with like what were some core lessons that you've learned early on in your career that kind of shape you into who you are today?
Yeah, so thanks for having us, Grace. So Sami, CTO at Maven, background 4 companies, worked at Lotus, worked at Google, exited 2, and kind of like it's a very exciting time. And in terms of lessons, it's actually one very simple lesson. Nobody cares about the tech. Solve a real problem in the world. Nobody cares how it works, but solve a real problem. And when I kind of think about that, it became much more apparent later in my career. And I really learned that at Google. When we were building, doing kind of the big rewrite of Google News, this was the time around the presidential election between Hillary and Trump, lots of issues, filter bubbles, fake news, all that. What kind of we gravitated back to what is the user problem we're solving? What is the user problem we're solving? And what came back was people wanted news about the things they cared about, not the front page of a major newspaper. So that's why we built, at the time, the largest real-time personalization engine at Google. It was a pretty significant endeavor. And we pretty much I applied that to my, ever since, in the case of Maven, we were pretty much very focused. There's this new technology that fundamentally changes how that really kind of assesses that function and AI capabilities. And we were really kind of, Jonathan's a domain expert in customer experience. I've lived through it on the technology side. And what is the real problem? We've really dug into the human problem. And as a result, it actually created the product that we built, which was really AI agents that operate at scale, that truly embrace this core problem that customer experience is really hard, not because people don't want to build great customer experience. It's just a really hard problem because people need to log into 6 to 9 different systems. This was core to how we thought about the product because we really went after the human problem.
For sure. I wonder, I feel so bad for Jonathan that like because oh no. Oh my God, what is going on? I'm sorry, did I do anything? What is going on?
But it's a fun experience. It's like we talk in 5-second clips.
Yeah,
Oh,
corruption
no.
crashing for us. Or for me
Oh
at
my
least.
God, I feel bad. Okay, so why don't we also like start with like Jonathan on like, you know, what were some things that you've learned early on that you kind of feel like you took later on while you guys started Maven AGI?
Yeah. Grace, I think one of the things that was interesting is that I started off my career writing code at a company called Sybase, which was many years ago. And the next job that I took after that was with a company called Unica that was very early on in the marketing automation space. As you mentioned earlier, I worked for a variety of different companies that were market leaders in the customer experience space. I think one of the things that I began my love affair with personalized experiences and customer experience was seeing the impact that could have with some of the companies that we were working with. I remember one of the very first companies that I was working with when I was at Unica. It was a company called Jockey. And it talked about how they individualize each experience down to like, the types of clothing that they were selling and, swimwear and things like that. And they had these very specific types of ICPs, and you went super deep in terms of segmentation. But I remember walking away from that very early on and saying, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if you could be able to understand everything about every customer of yours,
Mhm.
where they live, what's important to them, and create this personalized experience for each of them. And I think it's interesting because you pointed out Sami and I have kind of different tracks in terms of our areas of focus. Sami's been very focused on engineering and on the product side, while I've been focused on working with customers and delivering those great.
Oh no, what is going on today?
Yeah, but Chrome just consistently is crashing.
Oh no, oh no, I feel so bad. What is going on? Typically, this never happened. I feel so bad for like, oh my god, today's StreamYard God is not like happening. I feel so bad. Okay, so yeah,
So
um,
So
yeah.
yes, I was right in the middle of talking about like the personalization and why that was important. And so when you look at kind of some of Sami's early research that he was doing at the MIT Media Lab, it was about creating personalized experiences, and he drive that forward through Google News and the experience that he created there, where he helped to create one of the largest personalized indexes at Google for billions of users. Now, when you look at what I was doing, I was working at these companies like Adobe and Sprinkler and HubSpot. And we were very focused on how do we help companies create personalized experiences for their customers. And so I think, when we looked at the opportunity in front of us and the challenges that I had at HubSpot, where we were one of the 5 fastest growing B2B SaaS companies ever, Grace, after $1 billion revenue. And so, we went through these crazy quarters of growth where we were growing like 83% quarter over quarter. And we're adding a ton of customers. And the first thing is like, how do you continue to support them? And of course, we created these scalable mechanisms that allowed us to be able to hire people, bring them on rapidly, and interact with customers. But as we continue to add more customers, the challenge we had is how do we continue to deliver that same great experience that HubSpot was known for? I'm sure you heard a lot about that at the HubSpot conference you were at, but that's something that was very important to us. And the thing that we found, in order for us to make sure that our customers were getting the value out of the products they purchased, we need to spend some time with them. We need to understand, how do you go out there and how do you create a marketing campaign? And how do we help them set it up? How do they extract value from the products they purchased? And so when our CFO came to me and said, hey, you need to focus on how do we scale in a nonlinear fashion? How do you create the same impactful, customer experiences without having to continue to add a whole bunch of people?
Mhm.
And so I started chatting with Sami and our third co-founder, Eugene, who was at Stripe leading the Applied ML team there. How are you guys doing, these really personalized experiences at scale? What we found was that everyone had the same problem. Whether you were at Google, whether you were at HubSpot, whether you were at Stripe, every other company also had the same challenges. And so we went out and, as you mentioned at the beginning of this, we said, we're going to go start a company. We're going to help solve this for companies that are having the same struggles we are. People want to be able to deliver a great experience to their customers. We want to enable them to do that. And we raised a seed round from Lux and E14 in a very short period of time. And so we were fortunate to be able to find investors who believed in us as soon as we were ready to do this, and move rapidly to start hiring engineers and start building on the product.
For sure. I wonder, I have so many questions about the customer success since I am my own customer success all day, every day. I find it like you said, like I think personalization is key. Like sometimes you already forget about like, oh, what this customer wants versus like this other person. There's always like some sort of like differentiations, or like people want like customized like feature or offerings from them. And I wonder, so like first of all, like I think there's so many customer chatbots out there. Like, even on our podcast, we have the $1 billion chatbots came on. But I think like one thing is like how do we differentiate, since everyone's claiming somewhat to be a personalized, but technically I think there is like an algorithm that kind of producing these answers from a database that's like from the customer's past experience, or like past badge of like maybe like a database or something that's just like having like a generic answer to a lot of people. And I wonder, first of all, like maybe if you could talk about the first product, and then the second of all, maybe because Anna said a lot about like, I think like she picked you guys because of like the strategy was very different than like a lot of these other chatbot focused company. You guys are thinking doing the writer AI approach, which is like maybe like expanding into multiple different areas of like a person's like workflow. Maybe we could start with like the first, like how do you guys build the first product, and then how do you guys think about like the product expansion into the
Yeah.
enterprise universe?
Grace, let me talk a little bit about what we built and why we built it, and then Sammy can get into some of the specifics of like what the heck did we build and some of the challenges that we're seeing and how we're helping people to solve some of the challenges. And so the first thing that I would do in customer success, and you've probably done this yourself, Grace, since you're your own customer success manager, is you go out and you say, what's the customer journey that we've constructed here? And you have one. Everyone has a customer journey, right? From the time that you hear about a product to the time that you interact with the sales team and you convert to becoming a customer, you go through the process of using the product and figuring out how to use it, normalize usage, and then deciding whether you're going to renew or not. Like, that's the general process you go through. And you have that, every company has that. And so when I would go into HubSpot or Sprinkler, I would go in and I would say, let's map out the customer journey. Let's understand from our customers, what are the challenges they're facing as they go through this entire process. And without fail, whether you're at one of the world's leading companies in customer experience, or you're at the smallest one-person company in the world, your customers are going to say, it really sucks when I have to go and explain myself multiple times on why I purchased a product, what I'm interested in, what I'm hoping to get out of it, and how you can assist me. And so the gaps that occur in your customer journey are in those handoffs. And so when you go out and you talk to customers and say, how could I make this company a better experience for you? How can I help you extract value from the purchase you've made? They always come back to me and say, it'd be amazing, Grace, if you could just give me one person who knows everything about me. They know every historic interaction that I've had with you. They know everything about your products, your offerings, and how they can help me. And then they can actually help me to be able to achieve the outcomes that I'm looking for. That's what customers want. And so when we looked at the problem, we said, great, we understand the challenge that customers have. How do we help them to solve that? And you're right, there's a whole lot of chatbots that are out there. And people put them on the website, they give them access to some knowledge, and they say, hey, they're slightly better than the chatbots we used to have before that didn't answer our customers' questions at all. We think much larger than that. We think about how do we help you deliver an amazing customer experience for every single one of your customers, like a personalized assistant for every customer that you're interacting with.
Sorry, keep going, Sammy.
Yeah, and kind of building on that is that it's an entire experience across the entire customer journey. So when we say, like, what did we build? We didn't build a chatbot. If you want a chatbot, there's a lot of them out there. We actually built AI agents that operate in every imaginable modality. You can chat with it, you can SMS it, you can WhatsApp it, you can integrate it into your search experience. We give you APIs to integrate it directly into your product. You can talk to it. You can every imaginable modality. And the reason that's important is customers and users if you want to create value, you have to be in their workflows. Expecting people to use a product, go to some other place to kind of get the AI juice and then come back is not the best user experience. You need to be integrated. If you have a lot of field folks, it's SMS and WhatsApp. If you're inside of the product, it needs to be a core part of the experience. If you want to talk to it, and also kind of the nature of the product that we built allows you to move from one modality to the other seamlessly, eliminating all these handoffs. You're kind of engaging with it in text, and maybe you want to jump into some other modality, voice or SMS, because you're on the move and it's just one continuous interaction. So that's kind of like one part. The second part is that we really kind of dug deep into how do you build these chatbots, or these, not chatbots, these AI agents that can actually solve real user problems, not just answer based on knowledge, actually understand it, personalizes the interactions, and is able to do things on their behalf. I want to upgrade. I want you to add a user. I want you to dispute a charge, whatever it is. So we've actually created a platform that can actually manage and operate these things at scale.
Do you guys want to showcase the product?
Which one is it, Grace?
Do you guys want to showcase the product? we can like do like the present mode. I mean, of course, I don't want to challenge the technical connection today, but
let's skip that for now. I think.
Okay, yeah, sounds
Yeah,
good.
I just feel
It's like
we've been
yeah,
having all sorts of technical challenges.
exactly.
We're rolling dice with the technical support gods right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna feature some audience thing. Thank you, Dongsheng, for like coming and say hi. Okay, so I'm just saying hi to like any like audience who decided to come in, and then also the StreamYard god decided to make the comment appear. But I wonder. So thinking about like I guess like having the multi-modality, multi-model approach for customer success. I wonder, like, first of all, like, who are the audience that you guys are targeting? Because I know that TripAdvisor is a client, and obviously you guys are based in the East Coast. Like, I guess like, how do you think about like, do you think about like going to the mid market or like the brand logo first is like the best approach, or do you guys think about like the SMBs? Like, I guess like who is our target audience at the very beginning, and then how do you guys think about approaching it from a strategic level to like landing, enter into the I guess like the Fortune 500 and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, Grace, because it probably gets to the core of what a lot of your audience is interested in. I know you focus on helping people to be able to understand how you go about starting a company, how do you raise money. And I think one of the challenges that you have when you're an entrepreneur and you're going after something that's like a very broad problem and you're taking a horizontal approach, where do you get started? And so when we first started out, we said, what exactly is the problem that we're solving? Well, it's customer experience. Now, that's incredibly broad because that's something that every company has a challenge with. And so what is your entry point into that? And so we went out and we said, okay, great. We think there's a couple of various entry points into there in terms of the starting point that we should go after. The first one, e-commerce, like that seems like an obvious one. Who of us has not had a package that we needed to return or a challenge with something that never got shipped? And we're like, great, that's an easy one. Everyone uses e-commerce, obviously a growing market. It's really easy to go after because you're only seeing, probably like 3 types of questions on average. Like, hey, there's a problem with my billing. I want to return my package. There was an issue with what I received.
Mm-hmm.
And like, okay, that's an easy one to get started with. You could probably spend that up pretty quickly and get started rapidly in terms of deploying that and getting that in front of customers. But as you go deeper into that, you actually see that like your CAC is actually relatively low for e-commerce. You invest less money in LTV and making sure that you're keeping those customers. And the way that they're supporting customers today is like kind of driven by the lowest price point. And so we said, because it's easy, because there's a low moat to entry, you're going to see a lot of entrants kind of focusing on the e-commerce space. So like, okay, that's good learnings for that area. The next was, and you brought this up earlier, hey, there's a bunch of chatbots out there. Why don't we just create a better chatbot, stick it on your website, connect it to your knowledge, and you can do something that's a step function improvement over what you have today. And then for that, we said, well, if we think about how do you win in the customer experience market, it's not building a point solution. It's not just having a chatbot. You actually have to think holistically about the customer experience. The other entry point that we considered, and the one that we ended up going with, was, hey, in enterprise, it's actually pretty hard to be able to get your feet under you and to get your first customers. First, you have the security hurdles you have to go through. You have the legal hurdles you have to go through. You have long sales cycles. The average sales cycle in enterprise is 18 months. And you have to be able to connect to 7 to 9 different systems, integrate with them, pull all that data together in order to be able to answer the customer experience questions that your product would receive. And so that's the one we actually ended up going with. We felt like there was a massive opportunity in enterprise where people are spending hundreds of millions of dollars in order to better serve their customers. And they're spending that money race and then not delivering the outcomes that their customers are looking for. And so for us, that was where we chose to start, actually on the upper end of the spectrum. And part of that is driven by our backgrounds, our experience in enterprise, and trying to deliver those exact types of experiences to our customers.
For sure. So I was like taking notes. So I guess like you mentioned about like the security hurdle and then the legal and stuff. Like I guess like, so does this means like you should start with like I guess like you mentioned about like the e-commerce was the most easier one because of like people are buying stuff, and then there's like the question are more generic than like super tailored. And I wonder, so like what were some learnings at the very beginning when you were entering this market, and then how do you differentiate the products, since the products are based off like personalization, and if like most of the chatbots can answer the generic questions, like what's kind of like, how do you kind of like showcase your differentiation in that domain basically?
Yeah, really good question. I think when we started going out and looking at the challenge, Grace, when we first started introducing our product to customers, and we put basically a ChatGPT interface on top of their knowledge and what we had access to. I think people were like, holy smokes, this is pretty amazing. It was like this. This is the first time we're actually seeing ChatGPT as well, like from a consumer perspective, and it felt like a magical experience. And for us, we were like, this is cool, but in order for us to continue to evolve the user experience, there's something much broader that we're going after. In order for you to be able to create that personalized experience we were talking about, you need context. And so one of the customers we're working with is a company called Row. It's a fintech company, and so their customers might come to them and say, "Where's my money?" And if you don't have context for why they're asking that question, you can't answer it. And so you need those deep integrations in order to be able to address those inquiries. Now, in the enterprise, usually integrations take a long time. For us, we actually have over 100 integrations that are out of the box that allow us to be able to move incredibly fast in terms of implementing with customers. And so some of our customers have actually like signed on a Thursday and they're live on Tuesday, right in front of their customers. And the average number of inquiries that Maven is able to answer for customers is over 90%. Mm-hmm. And so you were asking, like, how are we different? Well, the technology that we've built is different. The way that our approach is different to creating these personalized experiences. We're bringing together all these disparate sources of knowledge, of personalization and actions in order to create that amazing customer experience that's able to answer questions for many of our customers better than a lot of their customer support agents could.
And one thing to add to that is that as part of the learnings of building the product is running this stuff at scale in production is a completely different league. Actually, some of our best customers are the ones that said, let's go try to build it ourselves. They end up with a spectacular demo, but they can't get it into production because it's so hard. It's incredibly challenging to go. And it's one is, how do you do the integrations at scale? How do you do the observability? How do you do things like security? Especially when you start to run these things in edge cases, bad actors, content safety issues, dealing with PII, etc. So a lot of the pieces necessary to go from amazing demo to production is some of the problems that we've solved. And how do you do this with low latency, doing incredibly large numbers? So that's one of the biggest challenges that also we've solved from a technology is we've figured out how to take this stuff at high quality and run this in production at scale.
I wonder, since like we talk about personalization, can you guys chat about like the product itself? Like, how is this like differentiated from me using ChatGPT? So I guess like obviously you would have to dump a lot of data into it. Like obviously I would assume like our past conversation with the customer success, and then, let's say I'm just thinking like, let's say the clothes I order from, I don't know, Amazon or something. And like after you have this data, what are you gonna do with this data? And like how is that gonna improve the customer success rate from my case?
Yeah.
Or maybe you guys can use like TripAdvisor as example. I don't know if TripAdvisor is gonna
let me kind of describe. So when you kind of use ChatGPT, it's grounded in the truths of the world.
Yeah.
You use it, it understands the world. You can ask it anything. It's able to answer that.
Think about where it's been trained from, and it maybe shapes some of the reasons why it gives the answers it does.
Yeah. And so what we have done is we've actually we're creating AI agents that are actually grounded in the truths of the organization. It knows about the organization. It knows about its internal systems. It knows what you have access to. It knows who you are. It knows your, if you're a platinum user versus a silver user, that's what it applies to. If it knows how to not just answer questions, but it also is able to do stuff on your behalf by calling the appropriate APIs behind the scenes to do upgrades, add users, what's my account balance, access telemetry, whatever it is. So that's kind of like one initial difference. It's actually grounded in the truths of the organization in a highly secure and personalized way, where it knows if you're an internal employee, you get access to different things from a customer. So that's kind of like one class. The second piece is that this is how we make it achieve kind of the levels of automation there. And we're pretty much with most of our customers in the 90th percentile, which how do we do that? And one of the very, very first things, Grace, that we built when we were developing Maven is an evaluation framework. When I was at Google, when we pretty much had data scientists build new personalization algorithms or ranking algorithms, we used to run human evals to figure out which ones were better. And that was kind of the way we measured and decided what won and what went into production. We took that and we created an agentic version of that, where every interaction is evaluated. The beautiful thing is once you have a metric, you can move it. If you don't have a metric, you're kind of flying blind and you're just adding stuff. And as a result, it creates an environment where you're actually evolving these things based on impact, not just like what's going on. Because you have a metric, it kind of unlocks what we call this double flywheel, where you integrate with knowledge, systems, personalization, actions, you observe the system, and then based on the results, you're able to figure out how to close the gap. And we've not only just said, like, here's some recommendations that you need to do this integration. We'll actually write the missing content. We'll actually author the missing documentation that is necessary to close that gap. And it kind of unlocks this flywheel where we are able to clearly articulate to our customers, in order to go from 73.5 to 89.6, we need access to this, this, and this. And this is the data which ultimately creates a very clear business case to get access to these systems, because you're driving it based on impact. Mm-hmm. So it's this journey, but it's very data driven. There's a clear business case and there's clear value that's coming out of it. And it's not just integrations for the sake of integrations. And as a result, like, as we've been doing this, building high quality agents that achieve 90+ automation rates is really, really, really hard.
Grace, if to use an example that we're probably all relatively familiar with as it regards to customer experience and customer support specifically, I think Klarna is one that comes to mind, right? It's like, was it about a year and a half ago, they came out and they're like, hey, we figured this thing out. We went out, we worked with OpenAI, and we don't actually need any more customer support agents. We're going to let them all go, and things are going to be amazing. And then 8 months later, they came back and they were like, actually, we're just kidding. Turns out that in order for you to deploy AI agents at scale, you actually really need clean data. Your AI agents are only as good as the data that they're being trained on. And so, when we were talking about how our platform is integration first, and we have over 100 integrations that come out of the box today, the next thing after you integrate with the existing systems is how do you bring those disparate data sources together and use those in order to be able to address customers' inquiries. And so we would go out when we first started and we'd talk to, TripAdvisors and other companies like that. And we'd say, hey guys, we're here to help you deliver a better customer experience. And they'd say, hey, that's cool. We'll come back to you when we're ready for you to be able to use our data. And we've gone through an entire data cleanup process. Mm-hmm. So one of the second things that we did was actually we said we need to be able to help people manage their data. We actually need to help them clean it up. We need to help them improve it if we're going to be able to deploy AI agents at scale. And so integrations, data management, and of course, all the things that Sami was talking about allow us to be able to deploy at scale and hit these crazy numbers that we're putting in front of customers. And that's the reason why our customers are choosing us. When they go out and they look at all the other players in the market, they put Maven head to head with them and they say, Maven is clearly the best one out there. not just because Sami is really nice, but actually because it's able to answer way more questions than anyone else can.
I wonder, so like, can you walk us through a process of, let's say if I'm a TripAdvisor or something, what kind of data do I need to provide to Maven? And then how are you guys gonna like, I guess, dissect the data or like clean the data and then make it into use?
Let's talk about the customer journey we were just talking about a few minutes ago, Grace. And you think of the different systems that your information is being stored in order for you to be able to, construct that journey. So first, on the marketing side, you might be using, Adobe or Marketo in order to send out marketing collateral. Then the next thing is that when a sales rep is talking to you, maybe you're capturing that information in HubSpot or Salesforce. After you become a customer, they might be putting that information into a Gainsight or something like that. And then when you're interacting with the support team, it's probably in Zendesk or Salesforce, one of those systems, right? And so those are kind of the different systems where information is being captured. Now, you also have the proprietary systems. I mentioned Roa being a customer earlier. Well, you actually need to be able to tap into their deposits that they made. And so the existing kind of system that they have there, you might need access to billing system if someone comes to you and wants to protest, hey, there was an erroneous charge on my account. And so those are the types of systems that you would integrate into Maven, that we would bring that together in order to be able to address customers' inquiries. And so you think about you have a whole bunch of different types of data that you're bringing together. And so obviously, you start bringing that together and it could end up being this crazy mishmash of erroneous answers if you don't have the tooling in place in order to be able to manage that and understand what's relevant to the conversation that's being had.
I wonder, so I guess in terms of pricing the service, how do you think about from a pricing angle, how do you package it into something that people are easily gonna say yes to? And obviously you don't have to give any details that you don't want to, but how do you think about in the sales process of your own product?
Yeah, it's interesting, Grace, because when we started off, talking to folks, and it was, I mentioned, it was we're seeing ChatGPT for the first time, and we're like, this is pretty magical. And so the first conversations we had and the way that people were used to paying for support products was based on volume. What's the number of customer support tickets that are coming in? And so that was kind of the first stab at pricing. And then as the capabilities continued to evolve to the point where people said, you know what, I could probably put this in front of customers and I could use this instead of some of the third parties that I'm using to answer these customers' inquiries. I really want to make sure that our interests are aligned. If I'm going to be, relying on Maven in order to answer my customers' inquiries, I want to pay you based on resolution because I don't have somebody else that I can send these tickets to if you can't answer them. And so the way that people pay for Maven today is typically based on resolutions. Are we resolving their customers' inquiries? Are we able to answer the questions that we're being asked? And so it's great because it actually allows us to be able to align with our customers' interests and make sure that they're getting the value of our products that they're looking for.
I wonder, so since we briefly chat about the go-to-market strategy as well as building the product, in terms of actually building the company, I hear the founding story of how you guys met each other and always had the conversation about starting a company together. Why don't we talk about since you're building an AI product, so after, let's say, raising the venture funding, how do you kind of deploy the capital within your own company to help the company succeed? Where would you splurge on as a team?
It's funny, Grace. We just had a board meeting not long ago. And when we looked at the very first pitch deck that we had that we put in front of our initial investors in the seed round, we've actually been hitting on every single one of the things that we had set out along the way. We said, our seed round, we're going to do this. At our A round, we're going to do that. At our B round, we're going to do this. And so we're going through and we're checking those boxes a little bit faster than we thought we were to be honest with you. But we're going through and tagging those. And so in terms of splurging, we had a vision for Maven and where we wanted to go from the time that we started it. And it's interesting, so you probably hear all the time about how people have gone through multiple pivots and things like that.
Mhm.
We haven't done that, which is great, and it's allowed us to be very focused in terms of
Mhm.
continuing to create the outcomes for customers that they're looking for.
How do you set goals on like closing the customer? Just because I feel like one part is like how do you even predict? Because when you don't have a company, how do you have like the Series B go? Because I feel like also like for like a customer like a row or something, I think I believe Anna said like M13 was an investor of like a few clients and stuff like that, and I wonder beyond the investor that could make introduction or like people in your network that can for sure make an introduction, how do you make sure that like you either expand the profile on like how much ticket that you're gonna sell for them, or also how do you think about like do the revenue projection, just because I think that's probably one of the hardest part. And then in terms of profit margin, like, so I know that for bootstrap founder, there's like metrics that if in the first 5 years your value, like I guess like your profit margin is lower than 50%, your company's gonna die. But how do you think about it as like a venture back company? What does the profit margin or like the unit economic kind of look like for you guys to feel comfortable to keep growing the company?
Yeah, I think in terms of the unit economics, that's certainly something that we pay attention to and we review with the board. It's very healthy for us, and it's something that I think we're excited about as we continue over the long term. In terms of the growth rates and just kind of handling that first part of your question around, how do you go out and how do you identify product market fit outside of just, kind of investment, investor intros? I think that's a tough thing for a lot of people. What was interesting is the first companies that we started working with who really helped us to get insight into what are we building, what was going to be meaningful for them. They were paying customers that actually didn't come from VC intros. There were people that we found that had the same challenge that we were trying to address, and they were paying us 6 figures.
Mm.
And so I think that was really helpful for us in terms of, first of all, applying pressure for us to be able to create something that was meaningful from the beginning, that solved a real problem, and then making sure that we were also having conversations with other companies of a similar size who were experiencing the same challenges. So that's something that we did early on, and M13 led our Series A, and Row is a customer of ours, who is we share an investor there, but they're one of over 50 customers. So it's great to have those intros, but if you don't build a meaningful go-to-market motion that allows you to go out and identify who has the challenge that you're trying to solve and how do you interact, engage them, and help them to resolve those, I think you're going to be floundering a lot as you continue to grow the business.
And how do you guys think about like, I guess like how much to charge? I think we talk about like it's how many ticket that you're solving, but I guess like what portion of the money is their existing spending? Like, are you replacing some sort of like current solutions in like in-house, I guess, and then like, or are you guys doing it as like we're replacing for like 40 customer success guys at your company, so we should be charging their salary? Or like how do you kind of think about the monetization model going forward after, let's say, you land the original customer?
I think it's a really good question, Grace, and I think you see it in a variety of different places. And one of the reasons why we said enterprise is an area that we wanted to focus on is because LTV is very important to them. And so what we've seen from a variety of different companies, folks like ClickUp, for example, is that we were able to go in and they started with our Copilot solution, which is something that sits in their Zendesk or their Salesforce, provides the answer to them, provides them insights to the customer, and allows them to rapidly accelerate their capabilities in answering customers' inquiries. So they first started with that Copilot solution. They were able to accelerate their agent performance by over 25%. And now a lot of people would say, oh, great, did you lay off 25% of your team? No. Companies that care deeply about long-term, creating that long-term value for their customers, they're actually going out, they're reinvesting that and making sure that they're delivering an amazing customer experience. The people who are on their team are talking to the people who need the most assistance. And so it's been amazing for me to see that. We talked about Ro earlier. When they started using Maven, they actually did the same thing where they reinvested in their customer experience. They increased the number of interactions they had with their customers by 15% and allowed them to drive a 95% CSAT score. So we're seeing these amazing CSAT scores coming out of people saying, wow, I'm getting the assistance I need. I don't have those crazy late wait times that I used to have before where I had to wait for someone to get around to answering my ticket that's in a queue someplace. And I'm able to interact with someone when I need to.
Yeah, and the other thing to add is the problem they're trying to solve is how do you break how do you get to a place where it's not nonlinear growth? Every large enterprise is trying to increase the number of customers, etc. These are the customer experience functions grow linearly today, outside of kind of the introduction of AI, and bringing AI solutions allow for these things to kind of grow in a non-linear way, so that actually the margins are much more important in driving that growth.
And actually, the interesting thing is as you think about the customer interactions that are happening today, I think it leaves a little bit, to be desired for the customers. One of the customers we were working with is a company called Exclaimer, where they went out, and the reason why they started working with Maven is they evaluated their customer experience today, and they found that there was a number of questions that were being asked that their support team didn't even have access to the systems to be able to address those. And so it's been really interesting to actually help people create those amazing customer experiences that customers are looking for. I was talking to someone the other day, and they said, hey, congratulations on the fundraise. That must be super exciting for you all. You guys must be pretty pumped about that. And I said, yeah, that's great. It's great that we have amazing investors who trust us or helping us to grow. But the most meaningful thing for me has been actually seeing Maven deployed on customers' websites, delivering that better customer experience. That's why we built Maven in the first place.
In terms of like go-to-market strategy, since you mentioned Bro is like one of the 50 customers, and I wonder, how do you think about like building up that pipeline? What did you find effective? Was it going to trade shows, or was it like, just like DMing everybody who you ever work with in your lifetime on LinkedIn, or how do you think about that?
Doing more LinkedIn live shows with Grace was
thank you.
strategy.
Wait, clip this.
But in all seriousness, Grace, it was really about looking at companies who fit into our ICP, who are the people that we're relative to be able to handle those challenges with. You talked about, the security and legal challenge you go through when you're looking at enterprise. We went out and we did a bunch of certifications in order to make sure that people felt comfortable with using Maven and the enterprise. We did SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, CCP, all those different things to make sure that we had the security that allowed people to feel comfortable with us. Now, we did that because the people that we wanted to work with are enterprise organizations, people who wanted to create this best-in-class experience for their users, and they were open to finding new ways to be able to deliver that to their customers.
Would you say is the people who are already implementing AI in their company that are finding an alternative solution that's like the best clients, or were they the people who have never done any AI and then encountered Maven for the first time? Those are the most likelihood to have a better audience or a better customer turnout.
Yeah, I mean, it actually it's both in certain ways. It also depends on the organization. Some of the best customers we've had are people who've tried to build it. They come back, they know exactly what the problems are. They actually understand some of the things we're saying and actually relate to them. So it ends up being like a much faster sales cycle because they've been there, done that, and they know exactly what they're looking for. So that's kind of like one class. And usually those are technology companies who are very excited about the technology, end up investing, realizing, oh my God, this is way bigger than just like 2 engineers and a dog. It's actually a pretty sizable thing, and it's a long-term investment. So therefore, we should probably invest those resources directly into our own product as opposed to some of the go-to-market functions. That's a buy decision. So that's usually the pattern you see with technology companies. Non-technology companies are almost always kind of diligently doing a very thorough evaluation process to identify a vendor that can actually solve their problem. So it really kind of depends on the type of organization, but the tech guys, either they figured out they need to buy, or if they try to do it, they come back and they're much better buyers because they and historically, whenever we've met customers who said we're going to buy, we're pretty much see you in 3 to 6 months.
I have a question on like, so how long does a sales cycle? You mentioned about like 6 months, but I guess like how long is a sales cycle? And then like, what if like people are like design partner at the beginning and they never pay, or like these kind of stuff. Obviously this is not like a personalized question for you, but like just in case.
Yeah. Our average sales cycle is about 87 days, Grace. And so we've been able to really accelerate the education of the folks that we're working with, as well as make sure that they have visibility to how Maven works and the benefits that they receive from it. So yeah, we've been able to kind of move that sales cycle up from an enterprise perspective, which has been pretty amazing in terms of assisting us from a growth perspective.
And how do you deal with like customer success at the very beginning? Because I think like as a founder, you're developing the product as I guess, as when you're like building the product, you probably have design partners and stuff like that. Then people have to, I guess, give you feedback. And then you're your own customer success to a degree. Like how long does that period have to go? And then how much would you implement your own product into that cycle?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really great question because customer success is just, I think, key to making sure that you're delivering a great experience for your customers. And so that was actually one of the very early hires that we made in terms of ensuring that we were delivering the right level of success to our customers and they were getting enough time and effort required. But it's an aspect of it that we want to make sure that they're fully empowered using Maven technology. And so, getting back to how do we create these personalized experiences for our customers, aggregating all the information that we have about our customers and being able to help surface that for the people who are interacting with them is really important. And so that's something that's been paramount for us. Is like we have to be able to deliver the experience to our customers and be the first example of who we are.
Not just the best example of what it could possibly be. And actually a big part of, one of our big efforts, which we started on, is Maven for Maven.
Maven for Maven.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so I wonder, so in terms of like fundraising, I feel like your fundraising experience, I don't know how like likelihood most founder would share that experience because I think like most people are kind of struggling at fundraising, whether their product is like amazing or not. Like I don't know if you guys have any tips on like fundraising. Maybe there is because of like, beyond your experience, both of your experience as like, not the first time founders and you both have like really just like a lot of experience in general on building companies. I guess like for Jonathan, maybe this is like the first time you are founding something, but you work at a lot of these like high growth companies. So I don't think it's your first. You found a company called Veer, right?
Yeah.
So like, and then Sami found a company sold to Google. So like, how do you guys think about like fundraising as founders?
I think at different stages, you're looking for different things from investors, Grace. At the seed round, you're looking for, some companies might be looking for people who can make intros to customers.
Oh my God, sorry. I just saw that some of our questions have like 1,000 questions.
Well,
Hi, Steve. Okay, we'll address your question. Sorry. Please keep going.
Grace, you're a badass. You're asking amazing questions. That's the only one I noticed.
Oh, thank you. I'm crying, but anyway, sorry. Keep going.
So at different stages of fundraising, you're looking for different things. At your seed round, if you're struggling to be able to, find customers, you might be looking for a investor who's going to be able to make intros for you. At the next round, you might be like, how do you help in having someone who can help you identify your product market fit? At the third round, you're probably looking for something a little bit different. For us, one of the things that we were looking for is, first of all, great investors who understood what we were trying to do, but also people who were going to be able to be partners and customers for us as well. When we think about the future of Maven, it's a very crowded space, and there's a lot of different players who are talking about customer experience. And so when we look at the opportunity for us to be able to accelerate that and get Maven to the hands of every single enterprise customer who needs it and wants it, we need a broader distribution. And so working with folks like Dell and Cisco and Schneider was something that felt like the right thing for us to be able to focus on as we looked at our investors and the opportunity for us to be able to create these meaningful partnerships that would allow us to be able to move quickly there.
Yeah. So on the more general side, when you kind of think about fundraising, I think there's a couple of pieces. One is you need to be crazy. You need to be like batshit crazy. You need to have a vision that like you are changing the world. This is not about building a feature or a product. There is a vision that is much, much broader, which actually in our case, it's actually included in our name. Our aspiration is to not build support, is to actually build business AGI. And one thing I would encourage any founder, it's like, it needs to be batshit crazy. You're taking over the world. You have to, like, you are going to take down all the big guys, and you're going to be the next multi-billion-dollar, trillion-dollar company that's going to run the whole place. So it needs to be that level of ambition for it to first be exciting in the context of the early stages. The next part is every funding stage, you have to be very intentional about what it is that you're trying to achieve and the reasons in helping build, collect the data points for the investors to have a reason to believe. So, for example, early stages, like you're collecting money to build a thing. At a Series A, you're trying to find product market fit. At Series B, you have data that you have hit product market fit, and it's go time. C is probably some form of margin expansion and rapid acceleration, et cetera. But there needs to be a tremendous amount of intentionality that is grounded in a completely crazy vision. Because the thing I've learned is that like if you're going down the venture path, it's either go big or go home, and no one's looking for a lifestyle business. It needs to be way out there. You're trying to build the next Salesforce, the next Google, the next Facebook, and that's the level of ambition one needs to have for it to be more interesting for that high-end investor.
But I have a question there. So like, I feel like now we're living in a vibe coding era, like everybody, myself included, on the side, we're all vibe coding. Okay, so we're gonna address your question. Hi, LinkedIn user. I actually don't know. Besides, see if there's like another LinkedIn user that commented. But okay, so yeah, like everybody's vibe coding, and then how do you think about like these like vibe coding $1 million companies, and then seed strapping? Because like everybody after raising seed, they could just strap. Though I feel like obviously you need more capital to grow faster, but on the other hand, I feel like nowadays like the startups are like, after going through the current fundraising cycle, a lot of, because you guys are second time founders, so maybe it's like you guys have an easier time as someone with a lot of track record in your backpack. But like for the guys that are like have nothing, like how do you think about like them for them to fundraise besides having crazy ideas? I feel like in SF everyone have crazy ideas, like those are like just batshit crazy using your word. So yeah, like literally every day I hear crazy stuff. But the problem is like, how do you kind of like build up the momentum to like fundraise for the second time? And how do you think about like, like not everyone, first of all, like I feel like not everyone can fundraise like super fast, but the other ones like after, if they decided to like, since like there's so much like AI stuff going on, so like people could build cheaper product, maybe not with like a huge I guess like infrastructure in the back, but like they could build something that's like kind of working. So how do you advise these kind of like founders?
So there's I'll give my perspective. I'd love to hear Jonathan. There's a couple of pieces around this. I think the first one is, I think vibe coding and vibe marketing and vibe sales and vibe everything is pretty much put a lot of the historical ratios of how you build an organization up in the air. I mean, we see this today. The product to end ratios are completely out of whack. I mean, like we had some when I was at Google, does not apply because like the end is so much faster because they're vibe coding or they're using all these Gen AI tools to accelerate, and it's very, very similar. So the efficiencies of how one would build a company, it's definitely, there's a lot more efficiency. You need a lot less people, and the ratios are a little off, and actually many of the functions are blurring. And where that's going to land, I think it's going to continue to evolve, but it's actually something we're experiencing firsthand, and I think we'll see where it lands. But in general, this concept, like companies are going to be more, building a company has become much more efficient, which ultimately means it's going to be more competitive. There's going to be, so it becomes, well, how do you build a sustainable moat? And moats aren't always technology. It's go to market, it's business, it's relationships, it's contracts, it's a unique insight. And then the other aspect of moats is not I have a moat today and I'm like all set, or it's a patent or whatever. It's like, you need to think about it. Like when we think about it, our moat is constantly evolving. We are in the business of building a moat. It's not that we have we have a moat. I think we're ahead, but it's going to take 6 months for someone who's really smart to kind of catch up, or maybe not. But we need to constantly be ahead of the game, especially around this concept of like the vibe coding. The second thing is like I like to kind of get into this mindset when you're fundraising. What are the reasons to believe? Like you need to think about fundraising. Like in our case, yes, because we've had kind of wonderful careers. The reasons to believe are part of it, but like the mental framework for any either first-time founder or second-time founder is like, as you're kind of going in front or trying to raise money, you're pretty much collecting data points that are reasons to believe. There are, in our case, there's reasons to believe Jonathan can build a very high quality go-to-market organization. Been there, done that at the highest levels. I've done that at the highest levels at Google. So there are reasons to believe we can do that again. But there are other reasons to believe that it's kind of the mental framework is think about it as reasons to believe for each stage of the company and starting to kind of build those checkpoints, whether it's customer traction, whether it's technology validation, whatever it is, it's just build the case around reasons to believe.
Jonathan, do you want to add something?
I think, when I think about the opportunity that vibe coding has brought to a lot of maybe non-technical founders, it allows them to be able to create something quickly, rapidly iterate, and continue to create maybe a fundable idea. And before, you used to have to go out and you used to have to, maybe go raise money or bootstrap or, ask your parents for a loan in order to be able to make sure you have the money to go out and to go hire an engineer and hire someone to build a prototype for you. And so for me, I'm incredibly excited about this because I think we're going to see people rapidly iterating, moving quickly, and actually producing better ideas because we've given them the opportunity to be able to do that. So incredibly excited about what's being built and the opportunity that creates in terms of additional startups.
For sure. I want to be mindful of the time. Maybe we do one audience question and then 30-second fire round for everyone.
Let's do it.
Okay. So Steve says, in fast-moving domain like AGI, urgency often eclipse everything. Team focus, roadmap, priorities, even foundation, no vision. What urgency begins drive product decisions? How do you ensure you're still solving the right problem rather than simply responding to the loudest one?
So I'll give my perspective. I think one of the things that I know Jonathan and I share is that when we think about prioritization, we actually don't think about it in terms of prioritizing the list in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
We actually spend the time to think about what's our 3-year vision, where do we want, and like being very clear, like what does the world look like in 3 years from now? I mean, you can do 10, but like 3 is probably more realistic. And just kind of game plan and figure out where you need to do that. Because if you don't know where you're headed, it's very hard to prioritize anything short term, because you need to know where you're headed. Because what ends up happening is you're pretty much looking like right at your face, and and as Stephen mentioned, you're pretty much dealing with the loudest voice, which may not be the right strategic decision. So understanding 3-year, then that gets you to what you're trying to accomplish in 12 months, because the next phase of that 12 months is real, and it gives you an order of magnitude of thinking. Like, you're trying to achieve this, like, for example, we're trying to be a company that has this level of revenue in 3 years. In 1 year, in order to get there, in 1 year, we need to be hitting these numbers. So then it helps you like identify what are the most high impact things, and it gives you a framework to say yes and no to certain things, and kind of make the right level of investment. So and that's kind of very core to how we've approached building the company, what we've decided to do in the short term and in the medium term, and that's kind of how we think about allocating resources. But the last thing I'll say, early days, blood, sweat, and tears. We're like making sure the damn thing works too. But as you become more mature, it becomes very, very important to know where you're headed.
Great. I think what's really important for high-performing startups is you have to continue to be laser-focused. And so, I gave the example of what was our entry point into a horizontal challenge earlier. We could have just said, hey, we're going to go for it and just like going to build a product and hopefully it works for everybody. No, we said we're going to focus on a subsegment of the market. We're going to build exclusively for them at the beginning. And that's continued to this day. There's a ton of opportunities that come to us. Hey, could you do this for this government? Could you do this for this company? Can you go build this? And we say no to a lot of things in order for us to be able to double down on the customers that we have today and to be able to build towards that future of business AGI that we were talking about.
For sure. I want to end with a quick 1-minute fire round for you guys. What's your favorite book?
The 4 Disciplines of Execution has been really meaningful for me in a bunch of different places. When I first started HubSpot, I put a copy on everyone's desk.
Wait, what is it called?
The 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Oh, 4 Disciplines of Execution.
So I'll do 2 things. So my fiction and nonfiction. So one of my favorite books is Guy Kawasaki's The Art of the Start. Is one of the earliest books I read about startups, and I still go back to it. And the guy had a lot of insight in how we run. So I love him as a business author. And then the second one is The Alchemist, great fiction book that I have read multiple times.
Who would you invite to your dinner party?
Who would I invite to my dinner party?
I think we're fortunate to be in a world where we have some incredible founders, who are first generation in, technology, SaaS, people like Larry Ellison, Bill Gates, Warren Buffett's an incredible investor. Those are the people I love learning from. I was fortunate that HubSpot can be able to, I'd be in the office late and I'd talk to Brian Halligan and say, hey, Brian, the early days, there you go. What were the early days like at HubSpot? How did you navigate these? What were the challenges you ran into? So I learned a lot from, listening to, podcasts about founders, podcasts that are interviewing founders, and the founders that are I'm still able to chat with today.
Yeah, very, very, very similar. I'd love to kind of meet people kind of at the highest echelon of business success. Satya comes to mind for me. I'd love to pick his brain. What he did with Microsoft was incredible.
Who made the biggest impact in your career?
I think for me it was the second company that I worked at, where I really fell in love with the concept of creating a personalized experience for consumers. And I saw the impact that it had, whether you were in healthcare, whether you were in retail, whether you were in banking. It was a universal challenge that everyone needed to address. So I think that really set me off in a direction of focusing on a specific aspect of go-to-market technology.
In my case, actually, my co-founder for my first company. Learned a lot from his name is Masi Shore. He was the chief designer at Lotus, was CTO at McKinsey, and we are very, very good friends since my early career. And I think one of the things I'll add, I'm a first-generation American, came to this country, and one of the things that blew me away was how, especially when I got into the workforce, people seek out to mentor you. Mentor people that they think are like have a lot of potential, and that was, I think, I saw that in my first co-founder. I was very young in my career. He was very tenured, and he took me under and taught me a lot of things about building great product and building great companies, and I still pretty much apply many of the lessons I've learned from that time.
Where can we find you outside of work?
Oof. In my case, on a boat. I love boats.
Outside of work, if I'm not in the office, I'm probably on a plane heading someplace, Grace.
Love that. Well, thank you both for coming on the show today. It was such a fun conversation. I love your vibes, though you guys hate vibe as a keyword, but yeah.
Awesome.
Also,
really fun conversation with you, Grace.
I really enjoyed our chat, Grace. Thank you so much for having us.
Also, thank you, Steven, for dropping 10 questions in a row. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, great questions.
Is Steven an AI or is it a real
Steven is a guy I actually met. So it's our actual audience. So yeah, Steven, thank you.
Thanks, Steven.
Let me quickly